Welcome back to I Know How You Feel, a podcast for common experiences not so commonly shared. This is a platform for growth, connection, and mindful conversation. Today on the podcast, it's me. It's just me. I don't usually do this, but I have some stories to tell as well. So, I am coming on to share about my journey with Lyme disease. I am a writer, a storyteller, adventurer, bibliophile, and an inspiration junkie living on the backside of the Tetons, trying to find where I belong in a sea of extreme mountain people. Let's go.
It's time I go therapy. I need something more than time itself.
When I was first diagnosed with Lyme disease, I really had no idea how much controversy and confusion would come with it. Some people would blow me off. They'd be like, "Oh, you got bit by a tick. You're going to take antibiotics. You're going to be fine." And some people just looked at me really confused. Lyme disease sounds simple enough. It's a bacterial infection from a tick bite, but in reality, it's a world of gray. The testing is pretty unreliable. The symptoms mimic a lot of stuff. You don't always get a bullseye rash, and the cost of finding real answers can drain your savings and your hope at the same time. Over the years, I've watched a lot of celebrities speak out: Avril Lavigne, Justin Bieber, Amy Schumer, and most recently Justin Timberlake, each adding a little bit more visibility to something that's so often dismissed. Their stories do help reduce the shame, but they also reveal something pretty sobering. Even with fame and resources, no one really has this disease fully figured out. And the Lyme disease to which I'm referring to is the chronic Lyme. It's the long term Lyme. It's you didn't catch it and it's starting to affect everything. One of the most debated theories I've come across is the mold connection. I don't know if you guys have heard about this. It's the idea that chronic exposure to mold or mycotoxins could make everything worse or even drive the Lyme like symptoms. Some believe it suppresses the immune system and keeps the infections alive. Others say the mold angle is overblown. Like so many things in the world, I learned that the truth usually lives somewhere in between. So I'll share what that looked like for me, what biology says, and what my own body has taught me. I need to figure out how to insert one of those spooky, scary noises into the podcast. I haven't quite figured out all the podcast editing things yet, but I would like to do that because there's a darker question raised by this next thing I'm going to talk about, and that is a book called Bitten: The Secret History of Lyme Disease and Biological Weapons. It follows a scientist, Willy Bergdorfer, who discovers the Lyme bacterium and basically suggests that the disease's spread might be tied to Cold War bioweapons research. It's fascinating, a little unsettling, but it really leaves you wondering how much you really know about the origins of illness. And I tell people this all the time: the more I learn and the more I know, the less I know, frankly. I mean, there's just so much to know out there. I know people call themselves experts on a lot of things, but there's so many doors to walk through when it comes to Lyme disease that I just have a lot more questions than answers at the end of the day. And also, as our climate shifts, the risk landscape changes as well. So we have milder winters, meaning ticks stay active longer, spreading into places they never used to survive. And sometimes I think about that. Like, there's this small little tick, it can travel on a deer's back, it can sit on a piece of grass waiting for something warm to walk by, like you, and change a person's entire life. Frankly, ticks scare the hell out of me now. The official numbers say in 2023, there was over 89,000 Lyme cases reported to the CDC, but estimates actually suggest from like insurance companies that nearly 500,000 Americans are diagnosed and treated for Lyme each year. 500,000 stories like mine every year. Messy, misunderstood, and oftentimes dismissed. And that's why I want to talk about it. Because it's not just science, it's a person. And like we've talked about all season long on the podcast, no one's going to know exactly how you feel, but someone's going to understand. So let me start from the beginning. When I was in the 6th grade, a lymph node on my head swelled up. No one could tell me why. Doesn't seem terribly significant, but I look back on that and I can actually pinpoint that that was the beginning. I started having chronic strep throat as a teenager. I was constantly exhausted. I wasn't a normal teenager. I was always tired. I was always fighting something. My friends would tell me they stayed up late and they were messaging their crush on AIM and they were doing all these things and they went over to their friends' houses after they had soccer practice and this and that. And I'm like, I could barely get home after I went to my after school job or I went to play practice or tennis practice or dance team or whatever I was doing. I was dragging myself home to finish my homework and go to bed as soon as I was done. In college, it turned into chronic sinus infections, endocrinology, sleep medicine, ENT, urgent care, pill after pill to try to help me, allergy medicines, antidepressants, antibiotics, but no answers. No doctors in the Western medicine world could really see my body as whole. They just kept sending me to different specialists trying to figure out what was wrong in their realm. I knew something was deeply wrong, and I started to feel like a hypochondriac, which I internalized because that's what doctors would tell me. They would pause after I would be in there again. They would kind of look me up and down. They would make me feel crazy, and they would just put me on a pill. In 2017, my dad died. And a few months later, I lost my job. And it was like the ground I had been standing on for years just disappeared, and my body broke under it. After all that time, childhood illness, teen illness, being sick into my college years, that was my crash. There's a book called The Body Keeps Score. It's this idea that your body stores trauma and it will whisper at you and it will tug at you and then it will scream at you if you don't listen. And suddenly it made sense. My whispers had become screams. I sold my house, I packed up, and I started traveling. Once I was done with my dad's estate and wrapping everything up and trying to grieve, I was convinced I could outrun whatever was happening inside of me. On Instagram, it looked like freedom, red rocks, beaches, sunlight, but behind every photo was panic, insomnia, exhaustion. I went to Sedona and was hiking the red rocks, but I barely slept. I was in Maui. I could hardly drag myself to the beach just a few steps away. In California, I stayed in hotel rooms because I was too tired to explore. And then I came to Idaho. The pandemic happened and it was my full collapse. I was under 100 pounds. My hair was falling out. I had chronic infections, pain, anxiety. I could barely get out of bed. It was in Idaho when I finally met a naturopath who started connecting the dots for me. Toxic mold, advanced Hashimoto's, candida, parasites, nutritional deficiencies. For the first time, it was like someone was seeing me as a whole person. And I started IVs, supplements, detoxes. And for a while, I thought, maybe this is it. But healing isn't linear. And I feel like my story is the poster child of that. Some days I could hike, other days I could barely walk. My hair would fall out in clumps, then regrow in tiny baby strands. I was broke, scared, and surviving off the hope that this phase would end. Meanwhile, Justin, my partner, started getting sick too. Night sweats, heart palpitations, panic attacks, ER visits. I pushed for him to get tested, and sure enough, he had Lyme co infections. We started living together in our less than a year long brand new relationship. We were supposed to be in our honeymoon phase, but his health started declining about 3 months after I moved to Idaho. The amount of time we were both in the ER for scary symptoms related to Lyme disease are too many to count on one hand. It was around this time I realized something really important, and I hope that everyone listens to this. You can fire your doctor. The same naturopath who found my diagnosis was also keeping me sick, piling on supplements, missing key things. She was pushing gluten free diets while prescribing medication with gluten. It was wild. I was like, I'm not getting anywhere. I was grateful for what she had done for me initially. and that's fine. I can be grateful and still be done. So I left that doctor and I switched to an integrative provider and I started to improve, which is great. But the real shock came with a new test: intercellular infections, Lyme disease, co infections, and the missing piece of a 20-year puzzle. After that, everything changed. And if you've ever had chronic illness or even Lyme disease or anything of that nature, you know that diagnosis is just the beginning of another long battle. And it's really unfortunate the way that the system is set up, that it's basically two hard battles you have to fight instead of just one. It took me 20 years to get diagnosed with Lyme disease, and I'm still working through some of the damage of the Lyme 6 years later. It's wild that we have to be like this in the world, but we figured out that Justin and I both had Lyme. We were both working pretty low paying jobs at the time, both just trying to stay alive. And pretty much at this point, our honeymoon phase became survival, non existent. And I'll be honest, I was angry about that. I'm still a little angry about that. The system failed me. It took decades for anyone to see me as a whole person. And if you're in a health crisis, please find a provider who will look for a root cause, someone who understands trauma, nutrition, lifestyle, and not prescriptions. It all matters. It's all important, and it's important that they see you as a whole person. So we eventually moved into a van because we weren't working that much because we couldn't afford our rent. So at this point in the journey, Justin and I decide that we need to move because we're not making that much money and we need to work less because our health isn't that great. So we built out a 13 square foot van, Ford Transit Connect. Everyone was so funny. They're like, oh my gosh, you built out a Ford Transit. That's an awesome van. No, that's the big van. We were living in the minivan size van. We were getting really worried that we weren't going to be able to afford our rent and that we wouldn't be able to afford housing because our health was so bad. You know, everyone online called it van life, but for us, it was survival. We masked it pretty well. Um, Pretty photos, adventurous captions, but underneath there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of fatigue, and it was really hard because we were both sick and we were both living in this van, and we also were moving across the state. We put everything in storage in the city we are currently in, and we moved across the state to live in the van and work jobs that made double than what we were making in the city so we could try to get treatment, find a treatment, get better. Then COVID hit, knocking us down again. We had it at the same time, and we were taking care of each other, waking up at night, making sure the other person drank water and was breathing, all while trying to heal ourselves while living in a van with Lyme disease. Justin's journey with Lyme, it's really not mine to tell, but honestly, it's so wrapped up in my own. He was my only witness on this journey, that was right there, and I was his. We didn't have a very long honeymoon phase in our relationship because it got really serious really quick, and we had to go into survival mode. We loved our new home, but our work weeks quickly dwindled from 5 days to 4 days to 3 days to calling in sick enough to worry about money. Our health was declining and we didn't have any hope on the horizon. I was working at a grocery store and I remember how often I felt like I had to over explain why I was stopped on the stairs because I couldn't breathe or my joints hurt or I just felt so horrible that I just had to like pause for a minute. And it's so hard to be chronically ill and I guess look okay on the outside. I mean, none of the people that we moved over here to were longtime friends or family, so they didn't really know what I looked like healthy, and they didn't really know me before. So them seeing me so skinny, and my hair kind of thin, they didn't know that that isn't what I looked like. So there was no measurement for that. And so on the outside, I looked fine, but on the inside, I was like, can't believe I'm in my 30s and I can't get up a flight of stairs. finally, a friend pointed us to something called Lyme Stop. They did that about 5 months into moving across the state. And it's an alternative treatment that uses energy points and magnets to pull out Lyme. And people thought we were crazy. But we crowdfunded it to afford it. It was 7 grand between the two of us, and we were desperate for a miracle. And it worked. Honestly, if anyone in your life has Lyme disease, I would encourage you to send them to Idaho or Wisconsin for treatment. They use magnets, which again sounds crazy, but in the end, it was the end all be all to heal. Justin and I heard so much messaging throughout seeing so many doctors that we were never going to heal. You're never going to get rid of Lyme disease. You're never going to feel better. You're probably going to end up with a disability or a disease where you can't get out of it. I mean, it was pretty horrible. So when a treatment tells you that they're going to get rid of it, you believe them. And Justin and I also had, at the time, two friends who had been healed successfully. We were on a Facebook group reading people's success stories. And then recently, I connected someone on Instagram to this journey, and she is on the path to healing. And the waiting room has hundreds of testimonies of people healing. So it was just so nice in that point in our journey as we dragged ourselves to Lime Stop that someone said, I'm going to help you with this. So we went up to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, quit our jobs, put stuff in storage, and we got the treatment. And we were exhausted. We were there for 4 days. We stored our car, flew out of Spokane, Washington to Hawaii. We weren't sure about the recovery time at this point, so we had to go live with Justin's mom and brother. And honestly, I felt a lot of judgment from people because at the time they happened to live on Oahu. And nobody was feeling bad that we had to recover from Lyme disease on the beach. But I didn't have any other friends or family offering to take us in while we couldn't work or pay rent. I didn't spend my recovery time on the beach every day having a great time. I spent a lot of time laying down in a dark room with a migraine or sitting in one spot all day, exhausted or in pain. And that's just the social media perception. I think there's a lot of judgment in that area. And like I said, I felt a lot of judgment. I felt people being like, oh, yeah, like, oh no, they have to heal in Hawaii. Like, I don't know why they're so upset about that. We're not upset that we have to go heal on the beach, but that's not what we were doing. And when you're that sick, it doesn't matter what location you're in, you're not having a good time. So it took us a year to get through that detox. It was a really big year. We had good days and bad days, just like everything else. Again, healing is not linear, and the ups and downs really start to blend together. We finally got to a place where we can move back to the Tetons and restart our jobs. We went back to Lime Stop and got rechecked, and he pulled anything else that was left out of us. We finally felt like we were on the path up. We could both feel it. It was truly a miracle, and I went from thinking I was going to die in bed in my 30s to working a full schedule. My Hashimoto's would still flare, but it was very obvious the difference in my body. I could hike longer distances, I could walk up the stairs, I wasn't having panic attacks or bed rotting during the week. My brain fog was less, I didn't mix up as many words. I was getting my life back. There are over 200 Lyme disease symptoms, and between the two of us, Justin and I had most of them. But after, say, about a year after treatment, we had almost none of them. For the first time in years, I started coming back into my body. I could do so much that I hadn't before. I had so much energy, and the healing didn't happen all at once. It was slow, more like a spring thawing after a long winter, but it happened. And then I hit a wall. I found myself kind of burnt out, tired of always explaining my health, tired of being the sick girl, tired of being angry. It's taken me years to understand that healing isn't about going back to who I was before or trying to gain something I previously had. It's about becoming someone new. I have to be a little bit softer with myself because I'm still healing. I have to be more patient. I have to be more discerning with my energy. I'm more aware of the illness and trauma in my body and how it feels and how I need to work with it. After 20 years of fighting for answers, I know this much. No one else will fight for you the way you need to fight for yourself. You have to be your own advocate. You have to say no when the treatment isn't aligned, and you have to draw lines for anyone trying to lead you away from your intuition. That includes your friends and family. And this could be applied to a lot of things in life. Saying no is very powerful. There was a lot of times in my healing journey where I thought a doctor would be very helpful, and my gut was just like, you need to walk. This isn't going to help you. And that's hard. It's hard to have your hope ripped from you, but you need to do it. Healing isn't a straight line, it's a spiral. You'll return to old lessons, but each time you rise a little bit higher. And today I'm still learning. I think that life is a failure lab. You can always start the assignment over with a little more knowledge than the last time. Truly, at the end of the day, I'm very grateful for all the lessons I learned along the way, and I'm still learning when it comes to Lyme disease, my autoimmune diseases, mold, my health, life. I mean, we're all just here learning things and we're all just trying to grow. So I appreciate you coming and sitting down and turning on the podcast and taking some time to get to know me. And if you're going through a health journey or a struggle, mystery illness, chronic illness, I just want to remind you it won't be like this forever. Just keep advocating for yourself. You will find the way. I know you can do it. I did it. It took me a long time, but don't give up and just keep going. I know how you feel. Thanks for hanging out with us this week and listening to my story. This is your reminder to go into the world with compassion and empathy. We are all just living a human experience the best that we can. I know how you feel drops every other week. See you next time.